Vietnam there is a lake that glows with a special light, and in its middle is a temple dedicated to a great hero. Centuries ago, during the period in China known as the Ming Dynasty, China invaded Vietnam and, for a time, Vietnam was subjected to Chinese rule. Vietnamese culture was pushed aside as the people were forced to take on Chinese ways. In the mines and fields, people were forced to work to enrich China's treasury. Their anger and unhappiness grew until, at last, they gathered together to try to overthrow their oppressive rulers. One of the leaders of the revolt was the brave Le Loi, an honorable nobleman in the village of Lam Son in the Thanh Hoa province. Even the Chinese respected him, and invited him to become an official, or mandarin. But, loyal to his own people, Le Loi refused. Instead, he recruited and trained fighters against the Chinese. Although they were defeated time and time again, Le Loi and his fighters never gave up. As the fighting raged on, a fisherman named Le then carried on his humble work, rowing out day after day, casting his nets wide in hopes of a good catch. One day Le then felt something unusually heavy in his fishing net. Excited at the thought of catching a large fish, he eagerly pulled in the net, but was disappointed to see a long, thin metal blade. He threw the blade back into the water. However, each time he cast his net, the tug that he thought would be a host of fish was again and again the mysterious blade. "What is happening? Why does this blade always return to my net?" the fisherman sighed in despair. At last Le then decided that, since the blade refused to be cast away, he would have to keep it. He took it home and kept it in a corner of his hut. Years later, Le then joined Le Loi's army to fight against the Chinese. Le then proved to be a cunning warrior, and Le Loi often visited his home to discuss strategy. During on visit, Le Loi noticed something glowing in the corner of Le Than's hut. Le Loi approached the glowing light and saw that it came from the blade Le then had pulled from the water years ago. As Le Loi held up the blade to inspect it, two words magically appeared on the blade, Thuan Thien, which meant will of heaven. Le Loi believed this was a gift from the heavens, and Le then was honored to give the blade to him. Le Loi continued to lead his men into battle, but his troops were small, many of his men were inexperienced, and food was scarce, and all of these things led to constant defeat. Many of the fighters left the army, and the resistance movement became weaker and weaker. Le Loi, a few officers, and their handful of remaining soldiers finally withdrew into the Kai Lin Mountains. One day, while trying to hide from approaching enemy troops, Le Loi climbed a tall banyan tree. While in the tree, he saw a strange light gleaming from its branches. As he crept nearer he saw, tangled in the banyan tree's branches, the bladeless hilt of a sword. The hilt was encrusted with many precious jewels. At once Le Loi knew this was the hilt destined for the blade given to him from the heavens through Le Then. When he put the blade and hilt together, they fit perfectly. As Le Loi held his sacred sword high in the air he felt as strong as 1,000 men. He could hear the sound of the galloping horses and the rattling of invaders' chariots. He could feel the agony and sufferings of his people throughout the country under the harsh rule of the Chinese. He knew that the heavens had entrusted him with the task of using the sword to defeat the invaders and free his people. He knelt on the ground, looked up into the sky, and said solemnly, "Thank you, Lord, for giving me strength, courage, power and patience to conquer our enemies and drive them from our land." Loloi recruited more soldiers than ever to his army in the mountains and led them to victory, winning each battle effortlessly with the help of his magic sword. Before long, the Vietnamese people were free from Chinese rule. There was no sign of the enemy in the country, and the men returned home and lived happily and peacefully with their families. Because of his wisdom and his courage, Loloi became the Emperor La Tai II. Vietnam became a mighty land under his kind and gentle rule. He was highly respected and loved by everyone. One beautiful day, Loloi was rowing his Tuyen Rong dragon boat on Ho Luc Tui, also called the Green Water Lake since the water was green all year. Sounds of the water hitting his boat, Kim Kai, a giant turtle with a golden shell. "Loloi, the heavens are pleased that you have restored freedom and peace to your people. But now it is time for you to return the magical sword to its owner, Long Vong the Dragon King." Loloi thanked the turtle and its master for lending the sword and carefully placed it in the turtle's mouth, and the turtle dove quickly to the bottom of the lake. Thereafter, the lake was called Ho Hon Kiem, or the Lake of the Returned Sword. To this day one can see the glowing light of the magical sword beneath the water. Among his other titles, Loloi became known as Bin Din Vong, which means King of Pacification. He is founder of the La dynasty, which ruled Vietnam for more than 300 years, and is one of the greatest heroes the land has ever known.